Hi, hello there. My name's Tim Elliott. I'm here today to talk to you about creative leadership. So, creativity is one of those words that has a bit of an identity problem. So, I wanted to start with a little bit of definition, helping us understand what creative means. Because creative can mean you're an artist, you're an inventor, you knit pigeon keyrings and sell them on Etsy. You're a dancer, you're a rock musician, you're an engineer, an inventor, a designer, and guys like me, marketing people. So when you're talking about creativity in entrepreneurship, in business, and creative leadership, we mean this. These are the 4 C's of creative leadership. These are cross-functional creative skills that we need as entrepreneurs and leaders to be a success seeker and a successful leader now and in the future. So for a year or so now, a lot of my work as a consultant has been working with leadership groups in various industries across the way to help them develop cross-functional creative skills within their leadership team and within their employees. So creating a creative culture within their business. Because the next era of work, the next industrial revolution, is one that some frame as the future of work, some frame as the imagination economy. But what it means is that we have technology at our fingertips. We have some amazing software and technology, and that will augment our humanity and allow us to do stuff that is really difficult for a machine to do. It will make our work more human. We will get to do better work and do work better because the monotonous, repetitive, accuracy-based tasks will be better performed by machines that we control. So what will that leave us to do? Right? Our job as humans will be focused around these 4 C's. Now let's explore them in a bit more detail. So creativity. When I talk about creativity in business, right, and in creative leadership, I mean the thinking of and the doing of new things. So creating idea generation and innovating is doing new things, putting actions on the back of those great ideas that we have. We need to be really good at that. Next comes critical thinking. Critical thinking can easily be divided into 2 things, problem definition and opportunity capture. Now, they're both sides of the same coin. Right, a problem is just a challenge, and on the other side of a challenge is always an opportunity, but we really need to get good at those sort of things. We need the freedom to come up with some great solutions after the bravery to be specific and really define and understand the challenge we face. Next up is collaboration. It kind of does what it says on the tin, right? It's how you work together, how you play with others, how you build teams, how you do joint ventures. Now, in recent times, I've seen this come to the fore in recent COVID times, where there's been a lot of really interesting cases of joint ventures between companies who serve the same category. Could be seen as competition, coming together and working together in new and interesting ways to deliver a solution, to keep going, to keep the wheels moving forward, to serve the customer needs, which have changed, even if it's just in the short term. But we've also know the power of collaboration within our workplaces, right? The power of connection within our workplaces. Again, due to the recent pandemic, we've had to change the way we work, people being mandatory, having to work remotely, even if they haven't chosen to. It's expedited that behaviour. It's proven a lot of companies that it can be done. It's proven to some companies that they really need to work on culture and connection because when they're not in the same building, it's difficult to maintain. So the art of collaboration, right? The art of a leader being able to facilitate connection and facilitate projects and work still to be done, even though the dots they have to connect are a little disparate, is a really strong skill. And again, communication, again, it does what it says on the tin. We know what communication is. Communicate is how we tell stories and how we narrate the work we do. And again, we've seen proof of this creative skill being front of mind recently for a big company in the UK, a client of mine. They're spinning out their own agency for the first time in 43 years, a first startup, and it's around communication design and commercial storytelling. So communication and storytelling as a vehicle to narrate and map and inspire change amongst the people who are is really, really interesting. So now with these 4 C's, we have a grip on what creativity and cross-functional creative leadership skills we need to survive and move forward in the future. So let's move on. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to explain to you the 10 rules of creative leadership. So I've always been into simplifying the complex as a marketer, and I hope these 10 rules will be really actionable for you to take away and really simple to understand. And they're all based around the 4 C's of creativity. So let's get cracking. Number 1 is undertake diagnosis. So I'm a marketer by trade, as I've said before, and for me, the logical place to start is doing a really good bit of diagnosis. And over the last couple of decades that I've been working with companies in this arena, 90% of them miss taking the time to understand the situation, to really get into the nuts and bolts, to understand the ecology of the market, of the situation that it's in, of the diversity, the abundance, the action, the growth that's happening within it. You need to have a really good understanding of the situation. So here is a bit of research. You've probably got access to third-party data, the same with the rest of us. There's some amazing platforms out there. There's Google Research, scholarly articles, Statista, Forrester, Gartner. All these do really good third-party, big picture kind of analysis of trends and gains that you can use in your business when trying to understand that. And couple that with going a bit deep with a few of your customers, because you're here to provide the customer experience, get their opinion on stuff. Ask some people. Have a look at what your competition's doing. Try and understand the whole gamut of research and undertake some diagnosis. You've got to build a good understanding, because the stuff that follows, if you take the time, the stuff that follows will be a lot more effective going forward. So rule number 1 is undertake diagnosis. Number 2 is get creative. Generate ideas, let them breathe, and don't kill them too soon. So a good outcome of a piece of diagnosis is having the ability to communicate what you've learned, what's true out of that diagnosis, and what the opportunity is in some kind of challenge statement, some kind of how might we as a company deal with this situation or achieve this thing. Right, once you have that nugget, it's time to get creative, the fun stuff, right? Do some idea generation. There are millions of tools to help you generate ideas. There is not one particular I recommend. I just recommend you doing idea generation. Like some of my favorite are 30 circles and what's next and what's opposite and stuff like that. There's really good design thinking, idea generation tools. Just Google it. Find one that you're comfortable with working with on your own or with your tool. One thing I would say, though, at one point here is that brainstorming has been scientifically proven to be ineffective. Getting a bunch of people in the room to spontaneously have ideas is a terrible thing. There's a thing that's been born out of Google design sprints, and a company called AJ and Smart are super good at this, but it's called working alone together. Right, so you're still a group of people working on the same challenge, coming up with ideas for the same challenge, but alone. So no conferring, doing it silently. And then you come together at the end to prioritize and define and categorize your ideas. But it's a lot more effective. And that's what it's all about. It should be fun. You don't get the challenge or the yes butters because there's no conferring, and it's such more effective. You can generate really good ideas and solutions to the problem now within an hour and a half, and then it's your job to go forth and prove them. So next up, one of my favorites actually is you have to be a little bit brave. Now, bravery has been a topic within my industry, within the creative industry, for a while, because contrary to popular opinion, like with software and with technology, it's become really easy to be an effective marketer. There's an app for it, technically. But that's not where the money lies. That's not where the glory lies. That's not where the pride lies. That doing work you're proud of lies in being effective, not efficient. Right? And that takes a little bit of bravery, a little bit of ambition. There should always be a push. One of my favorite analogies that I use with my marketing teams and students is whenever you're putting out a piece of marketing collateral, say an advert, right? Use the idea of having one billboard, only one billboard, to tell that story, to get your message across, to stop people and get them to take action, right? And billboards, if you think you've only got one line, how good does it have to be? You have to be really brave with the creative, with the messaging. You have to push, because otherwise your one opportunity to stop people and get them to pay attention to your brand has gone. Luckily, in real life, we have 4 million different billboards. Everything we put out is a tiny little one-person billboard if it's shown through your phone. But brave is the level of creative. Bravery, creative bravery, is the difference between being effective and being efficient in marketing and in brand. And it also comes down to goals. So one of the most traditional models, again, taken from marketing, but is used widely in business, is SMART goals. So if you've not been aware of SMART goals, it's been done by, I believe, Dr. Dave Chaffee from Smart Insights donkeys ago. It's really effective. It's a lovely little model. And it helps you create goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. But I don't think that's good enough. And it's certainly not good enough in terms of being brave. Yes, you have to be specific. Yes, it should be measurable. But if you're not doing achievable and realistic things in your business, just as a matter of course, you've got bigger problems. So I always swap those two out with ambitious and relevant. Make your goals specific, measurable, ambitious, relevant, and timely. And that will give you the permission. You'll have to be a bit braver to achieve an ambition. All the glory's at the edges. Don't underestimate the amount of ambition, the amount of creative bravery you have to use in order to get ahead. It's such a good rule. Next up is go long. So again, these are rules that I've taken from my last 23 years experience. And as I said with the previous rule, that long-termism is something that's missing a lot in organisation. And all the money's in the long term. Right? All the money's in the long term. And I know in this country, in the UK, where I am, 99% of businesses, I think, in recent stats, are what's called an SME, or a small to medium enterprise. Which means a lot of businesses, most businesses that we'll be working with as clients or as customers or within or running, right, will be a small to medium enterprise. And small to medium enterprises have usually like a 90-day window of return, of expectation, of things like that. But it's our job as creative leaders to look forward, to go long. It's all a matter of mindset. Like Simon Sinek has recently published a book and done a lot of talks on the infinite game. I'm not saying you have to plan infinitely, although I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek and I think his work is amazing. But long term is 5 to 10 to 12 years. If you want your business to still be around in that time, you need to have that in a plan. Right? All the success and the things are in the long term. So Simon, again, just to use an example, highlighted the benefit of long-termism in brands, because this is quite old now and relevant to Microsoft's previous CEO, not the current guy who is doing an amazing job. But he's told a story about he had the opportunity to present an Apple and a Microsoft Learning Summit, which is something for their employees, right? They gather their employees in California and say, set the scene, put out the roadmap, tell the story of what's going to happen in the next year or so. And he highlighted the main differences that he heard during those 2 days. He said every talk, every discussion, every roundtable, every breakout room in the Microsoft summit was how they beat Apple. How can they sell more stuff, more product than Apple? Whereas in comparison at the Apple summit, they were thinking, how do we make designers better designers? How can we help teachers become better teachers? And this was exemplified by a ride home after the Apple guy. So he was in a taxi, I believe, or an Uber with one of somebody quite high up in Apple, who he thought he'd wind up. He thought he'd wind up, have a little bit of fun. He says, when I went to Microsoft, they gave me the new Zune. For those who don't know what a Zune is, it was Microsoft's attempt at iPod. He says, it's amazing. It's a lot better than the iPod. And the Apple employee said, I'm sure it is. Because they know they're on a longer mission, right? They weren't faced with short-term targets of beating Microsoft. They understood that some of their products would be better and some would be worse, but they're playing a much longer game. They're playing an infinite game. So this is the kind of mindset, right? Some of the short-term tactics won't work in a small to medium business and won't work for you, but it's not about that. It's about the long game. Finding out what doesn't work in the short term is equally as good and equally as valuable for the long-term goals. So to go alongside that, long-termism is remember the short. Right, short-term sales activation, short-term thinking support long-term success. Long-term and short-term is a battle and a debate going on online between many people much smarter than I, for a long time, and it's not an either-or solution. There's people who champion just long-term brand building, and there's people who champion what they frame as performance marketing now, like short-term, real sales activation based. But you need both, right? And the percentage you need both always should favor the long term. It always should favor the long term. So 60-40, 55, 45, 70-30, whatever works for your business. But all the money is in the long term, but you need the short-term sales success. You need short-term actions and response and learning and continual improvement of short-term activity to push you forward, to help you win the war, not the battle. So it's really important to not just go long-term, to think short-term tests will help when we get to the long-term. So just over halfway, and we've come to another one of my favorite rules, and this is make promises, because promises build brands and experiences. So I use this promises tool a lot with working at brand experience and employee experience and customer experience strategies with a leadership group, because the beauty of the words "I promise" is that no matter what job title, age, gender, experience, location, nationality, anything, everybody understands the words "I promise" and what it means if you don't keep that promise. And that's why promises is so powerful in business when it comes to experience. Most companies have a vision, mission, and values that are there. They might even be written on the canteen wall. But very, very few, from my experience, of those vision, mission, and values are believed or understood or lived and executed by the whole organization. But turning those into promises, turning them into promises and making them part of the job role, making them part of what you need to do as an employee or as a leader, is much more effective because it's really understood by everybody you tell that story to. So, for example, the promises you should make are your leaders. If you're a leader, you should make promises to your employees, to your team, to your management, to your lower level team. What promises do you want to keep as a leader of an organization to these people? What promises do you want to keep to your stakeholders or investors if you have them? What promises do you want your team, your employees, your colleagues, your people on the shop floor to keep to you as an employee? What promises do you make as a brand to your customers? And who's responsible for keeping them? What promises do you want your team to make to the customer in terms of customer experience? And all these little promises come together and they form a really effective experience design. So you want to start with brand experience before employee experience, before customer experience. All the greatest companies grow brand and experience from the inside out. And that's what promises help you do. It's really easy to get alignment and understanding. Whereas with mission, vision, and values, sometimes they're not even written by the people who run the companies anymore. And they're certainly not understood or cared about by the people who are delivering the customer experience for you. So try it. What promises do you make as an organization to those you serve? And what promises do you want them to make to you? Number 7 is story driven. We mentioned this in the beginning when we're looking at the 4 C's of communication. Be story driven. Now, storytelling has long been the center of human connection, and nothing's changed, in fact. Like the stories we tell, the narratives we design as organizations, as creative leaders, are more important than ever. So there are 3 strategic pillars of storytelling that you need to understand as a creative leader. You need to understand your story, your origin story. Think like a superhero origin story. Why do you exist beyond making money? What impact do you want to make in the world? And why should anyone care? Like, you need to understand your story and be able to communicate it clearly and with passion and with authenticity. It's not something you can farm out to an agency, to a market people, although the skill of facilitation, of helping you understand your story is something definite, but they can't create it for you. It's got to be your story. It's got to have depth and honesty and truth within it to help you along. Secondly, you need to understand their story. So when I say their, I mean the people you choose to serve. You need to understand the category you're in. You need to understand the market you serve, the segments within the market. You need to understand your customer archetypes. If you've not heard of archetypes, check it out. It's from Carl Jung ages ago. You can Google archetype or archetypal branding. There'll be loads of information for you there. You need to understand what drives your audience to action. What do they care about? and why is it important to you? Don't just look for traditional points of data, location, gender, job role, job title. I know these. I know from research that these are still the most popular and the most used within marketing and within research data departments, but they're also the least effective. Good marketing, good creativity, good brands are all born to drive people to action, not product. And that's where story comes in. Story drives people to action. It doesn't drive product. So look at things like behaviors, attitudes, interests, and opinions, the stuff that makes that person you're trying to reach a person, right? And have no baggage when you're doing that. You need to understand their story without any of your own prejudice and biases. And the final bit is telling your story. The final strategic pillar of being story-driven is being able to tell your story. So no one owes you your attention. You have to earn it. And how you tell your story is super important. Now, the kernel of your story, the thing at the center of your story, as a creative leader, doesn't change, right? But we're in a business setting. Right, and I know some of you out there will be B2B and some will be B2C, and some of you will ignore that and just be H2H. But there's generally 3 formats of story that work. You need to be able to tell your story conversationally, educationally, and inspirationally. So conversationally is really easy in terms of service and sales. Like, how do you in a conversation tell the story? How do you get that kernel of the story and like over within a conversation without any proof, without any data points? Because that comes in the educational bit, right? Some people you talk to will be detail orientated people, right? They'll be focused on, if you imagine a story being in a book, theirs would be more of a manual than a novel, right? So you need that devil in the detail. You need to be able to back up with data points and research and opinion and testimonials and all the good stuff. And the devil's in the detail for the educational person. And you'll be able to put it together in a deck like this, or in a playbook, or a company brochure. It's just a story. And then inspirational, right? Inspirational is for people who are driven by their heart, wear their heart on their sleeve. You want them to follow you through this story, because the story is just a map, right? It's a map of a journey people are about to take, right? And you, as a creative leader, need to lead them through that journey. So you need to tell an inspirational story so they will follow you as a creative leader. And that will help your story be heard by most sort of people, right? So the core of the story remains the same, whatever it is, but you can be agile and use context and empathy to tell your story to the right people better. Coming towards the end now. So the next one I've got is in there is amplify. And as I said previously, I'm a big fan of simplifying the complex. And amplify is my current favorite one-word marketing strategy, right? Amplify everything good. Amplify the stories you tell. Amplify the good work you do. That is going to be the most effective thing as a creative leader. If you amplify the good work you do, it does make a premise that you're doing good work. But I refer you back to promises and diagnosis then, so you know that you're going to do good work. But amplify, tell people your story, get it out there, get your marketing out there, put it in brochures, get PR, tell a good story of the good work you do, because amplifying good work and your story proves what you say is true. We can all do beautiful marketing that promises the earth, but the best marketing is when you can prove what you say is true in your brand. And if you've got that, if you've got the ability to be able to prove it, amplifying it It's a skill and an ethos you need to teach to everybody within your organization and do yourself. If you're a personal brand, if we're talking now as a creative leadership consultant, like I am a solo business person. I don't have a team. So it's important that I prove and amplify the work I do, because success breeds success. Like attracts like. It's really important to have the skill and the mindset of amplification of the work you do. The penultimate one. Here we are, coming to the end, people. And this is teach. So one of my favourite gurus or people who influenced me is Seth Godin. I'm sure you've all heard of Seth Godin, who says we are all teachers, right? And I love that sentiment. And that's why it's made it into the 10 rules of creative leadership. There's a little tool and tactic that I've used with clients for a while. And that's the idea of one more, like doing one more thing. If you're in customer service, you have a great opportunity, because customer service is one of the only times that you have 100% of your customers' attention. So if you can ask one more question at that time that will help you learn something else, you can teach it to the next person, right? If you, in your day job, it doesn't matter what you do through your work, how you deal with it, whether it's clients, whether you're employed, it doesn't matter. If you teach one more person the thing you've just learned, and everybody does that who you're connected to, what a place, what an employee experience, what a great working life would have. Because to teach is to learn twice. Somebody much more intelligent than me said, I can't remember who that is, but teach one more person what you learn. Ask one more question when you're in conversations with your customer or your suppliers, and then teach that somebody else. The ability to teach is such a good creative leadership skill, because you're there at the top. We're expecting you to be a leader. We're expecting you to have experience, to have stories to tell, to have different skills and a different worldview. But they're no good than just being yours. A really fundamental rule to make you a good leader is having the ability to be empathetic and listen, but to then teach, to take that opportunity to teach, take the opportunity to teach what you've learned to the people who need it. And you will see the benefits of it. And that leads us into the final session that goes well with teach. And it's listen and learn. And this is one I fought with the place of in this thing. It could have come before teach, but I want to share the idea of creativity and creative leadership and growth as an organization is a continuous cycle. There needs to be a mindset of continual improvement now and in the future. This is very much based in design thinking and the world of lean and Six Sigma and all that sort of stuff. But more and more companies, as we move forward into this new economy, into the imagination economy, into a future work, into a more agile way of learning, are becoming more lean, more agile, more human-centered design based than we have in a very long time. And that change is happening quickly. So it's the job of the creative leader to have the skills to listen and learn, to always understand continual improvement, to look forward, to look for the next step to improve things. Because you may well have teams, or you may well be working with clients where a good portion of their headspace, their day-to-day worldview is taken up by doing the job, by doing the work. They might not have the permission or the freedom that you have as a creative leader to be proactive because they're busy being reactive. It just might be the nature of the thing. So it's your job as a creative leader to listen and learn and then obviously teach. The ability to evaluate and prioritize is again something that we've seen in the core skill in critical thinking, something that we see in the double diamonds of design thinking. The ability to open ourselves up to potential solutions and then define them. So we're listening to a lot of people, we're taking in a lot of information from market, from category, from our teams, from our customers, from analytics. We're taking that and we've got to have the ability to categorize and define that. There's a great skill here in listening of definition, right? Of definition. And then the art of definition will boil all that information down into a concise point we can learn from and we can teach and we can action. So data is brilliant, but insights are actionable data. And then you need to communicate it, right? The cycle starts all over again. The 10 rules start all over again. So that brings us to the end. I'm sure there'll be questions that you can leave in the comments or ping me on social media. You can find all my details on my website. But that's the 10 rules of creative leadership in a few minutes of my thoughts on why being a creative leader and cross-functional creative skills is important now and in the future. I hope you enjoyed that. I look forward to your questions and having a conversation. Thank you.